Well, folks, after a few confusions over my microphone settings, we do finally have me here as a commentator. I do apologise for the delay. Well, we've got just under 6 minutes of qualifying left at the moment here at Watkins Glen. One of my favourite tracks. I do like Watkins Glen. Can't give you a good reason why. It just appeals to me. So I don't have control, unfortunately, over the cameras, etc. So we just have to watch what the auto camera is providing with us, I'm afraid. And so for those of you that are unaware of the game of Assetto Corsa, or the sim of Assetto Corsa Competizione, this only uses GT3 class races until very recently they've updated to allow a few GT4s. But this is primarily a GT3 game, sim. I enjoy it very much. Could do with a little expansion. It is somewhat limited in tracks and cars. But yes, it's a good game. It certainly teaches you some racing tactics when you get into team mode when driving online. I must admit, I do wish that we weren't currently focused on a vehicle that's sitting in the pit and doing naught. Lovely though his Lamborghini is, I'd rather us be watching some action. I'm sure you would the same. Still, we have about just over 3 minutes to go until we actually get some racing action. We're just watching the end of qualifying at the moment. We will, I hope, be presented with some results at the end of this. Hello, Rob.
Good evening and welcome to live coverage of the RWB International Constructors Championship, live here at Watkins Glen International. I'm Rob Lomas, and once again I am joined by Bruce Andrews in the commentary box, or rather Bruce will be doing most of the first part of the race. I can say that with some certainty because just trying to fix one or two things on my end. Although I think it's, although having said that, I think it might have
fixed it itself. Are you in control of who we're watching? Because I sure as heck ain't.
Well, earlier on, I know we were looking at Jakob Tarantino in the number 22 Lamborghini. Now we're looking at Sebastian Erdmann in the number 8 Honda NSX. That's a very good lap time, actually, by the way, to go P2. Radek Schuller, currently the only driver under 1 minute 43 seconds so far. So if it changes, and I know we've already seen Peter Varga in the number 12 Mercedes-Benz. So by my reckoning, it might all be working. Touch words.
Under your control.
I think that I'm not in charge of it. I've just basically set everything up, and I think it is all working now.
Right. Okay.
So
we're at the mercy of the auto camera tonight.
Yes, and also at the mercy of the fact that I forgot I was setting the stream up.
Oops. Well,
and didn't actually realise until about half an hour ago that I was actually doing it. So it is still a lot faster than last time.
Righty-ho. You got it on an SSD card now. So have you been since the last time we spoke? It's been a while.
Well, I've got some more letters after my name. Officially.
Official ones. Oh, right. Not
Yeah.
funny. Not joke ones.
No. As
is there a P and an H in a PhD?
Not yet. Masters. So
MA.
I have had to actually a few weeks ago actually dash back to Brighton to get the paperwork.
That's down my way.
Yep, as the checkered flag has waved in qualifying, and we're just looking at Patrick Nemcovski, who's jumped up to 5th place in the McLaren. Now looking at Dak Mason in the Mercedes in 26th place, going for the.
Oh dear.
Going for the.
Going for the hero's finish.
Line there. Well, the thing is that.
Going for
not a lot of people realise that. Well, the thing is that not a lot of people realise that if they've never actually driven Watkins Glen before, that turn 1 is actually very slightly banked.
It is.
It's so one of my favourite tracks. So if you actually go off there, you're basically going to have airtime
and lots of damage.
Well, that's a given.
Oi!
So it is.
I'm joining in.
Yeah, well, there's another similar to the Dunlop curve, which is the hairpin at the bottom end of the aggressive press track at the Nürburgring. And it's quite similar to there, and also similar to a place in Italy called Vallelunga, where you come.
Oh, I know that one.
Through the first few sweepers, and then you come to this braking zone at the end, and again it is slightly banked, but enough that if you do mess up there, then it's going to be quite painful. Just on
someone, I think they were doing. I'm not sure if it was Kyle Army or not. The Sunshine, the big curve at the end of the long straight before you turn around and come back across the start line again.
I'm not sure.
Hold on 1 minute, Sonny boy.
Right. Scott, 2.5 minutes. Just do a quick rundown through the grid. It's Radek Schuller on pole position ahead of Sebastian Erdmann. Honda locking out the front row of the grid once again. Then just behind them on row 2, it is Marco Badowski and Nathaniel Shirley. Tom Shipston and Patrick Nemcovski are on row 3. Shipston putting in a very late flyer there to go up into P5 in the Lexus. And it's Peter Varga and Kurt Hodgson on row 4. Rounding out the top 10 is Nigel Wood and Todor Kostadinov, with Magnus Dahlgren and Philip Hahn in 11th and 12th. Eddie Warden is 13th place ahead of Martin Schaefer. Then it's Crew and Lowe on row 8. Damien Vilk and Terry Agoris are on row 9, with Matt Al and Chris Brook rounding out the top 20. Then it's Johnny Lenz and Xavier Eugeni on the 11th row of the grid, with Jakob Tarantino in 23rd. And if I do this, which is going to be terribly awkward because I'm going to actually start hearing my own voice.
Waving your wand again.
Sec. I do this. Okay, maybe not, but either way, it is still, there's going to be a few other drivers in the field. And just close that for now so I don't have to hear myself on talkback.
Echoes are annoying like that. Genuinely, they really put you off.
It is one of the most unnerving things as a commentator. So I suffered from that a little bit during the first race. Actually, well, I say first race. It was technically round 2, but it's the first race we had broadcast for. So it's weird having to basically try and second guess when you've stopped talking 1 second after you've stopped talking, if that kind of makes sense. It's something that only really happens in broadcast, and it is
there is an even harder thing to do, which can be done though, is to train yourself not to hear yourself. We're off.
That's effort.
Yes, it is, but apparently it works very well. Bit of rubbing going on there.
Field coming down towards the final corner now for this 70-minute mini endurance race. Now, the last time we raced at Watkins Glen, there was a small incident. Well, that's quite the understatement. There's a massive pile-up going through the S's, so we'll see what on the opening lap. So we'll see what happens this time, but either way, the field coming towards the start-finish line now, and the green flag waves, and we're off here at Watkins Glen. It's a good start so far by all of the leaders. Schuller still able to hold on to lead. Badowski moving up in second there at turn 1. Currently looking at Nemtsovsky, who is still just behind the 2 Lexuses of Shirley and Shipston I make that 6th place still at the moment. There's been a little bit of an incident there in the back. There's a bit of contact there at the S's between Hodgson, and I think that might have been Varga in the Mercedes.
Yeah, he's going to visit the dentist.
Unfortunately, I think most of the field appears to have actually
gone through
in one piece. So there's another incident further back with Dave Crew involved in the McLaren pointing 90 degrees to the track. Crew, I think, letting the rest of the field through. There's one of the Mercedes entries. I think that is Varga there in the Mercedes, and Dave Crew has actually returned straight to the pits. Sorry, that might have been Max Hayes, excuse me, because Hayes is still showing us not having gone across the timing split. For Sector 1, there's been another incident at the chicane as well involving car 14. That's Xavier Eugeni showing us stopped on the inside of the circuit. Looking at Eddie Warden now, currently in 10th place in the big Nissan GTR.
I don't understand this need for early nerves. It's a long race. Don't push it so much in the first lap. There's no need. Give it a chance to settle down and then make your push.
It's just typical first lap things.
First lap nerves, yeah, but it's not.
Yeah,
it's more professional to take your time.
And meanwhile, in the midst of all that, Dowski's actually moved up into 2nd place. So we're now looking at Jack Mason in 20th place, car number 19. Mercedes-Benz, he's got Tarantino in front of him, he's got Mikko, Sky and Williamson right behind him, both in the Porsches. And it's Johnny Lenz, Matt Sherblum, Kevin Shepherd, Dirk Gretschel, and then the rather delayed duo of Peter Varga and Max Haynes, both in Mercedes, is currently riding on board with Mikko Sky, now coming out of turn 1, heading up into the S's. The little bit of tarmac on the inside there actually used to be part of the Grand Prix circuit. They built a small, supposedly temporary little chicane there back in the mid to late 1970s. It was not particularly good, and Varga has come into the pits, understandably, with presumably quite a lot of damage. Last time we raced here, we had a couple of drivers having to limp back to the pits with over 2 minutes worth of damage. And Sky, big mistake there at the outer loop, just a little bit of oversteer the front end of the car, wanting to go on towards the grass there, although he did damn good job holding it.
Certainly did, because
holding onto the inside there and just letting Williamson through in car number 107. Deciding that Williamson, being the quicker driver, is going to be able to mount an attack on Mason a bit better than he was. Meanwhile, Damien Lowe has got the fastest lap of the race, and we're currently looking at Magnus Dahlgren in the 297 Ferrari at the moment, just ahead of one of the BMWs. That's the Vulcan horse car of Hahn. So he's just moved up into 15th place. So we can see where Brooke and Tarantino were in comparison. But it's another position gain by Magnus Dahlgren. Car number 96, meanwhile, is just set the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 43.7. Heading through the final corner now. Of course, there are...
It's a shame we can't see the top of the top of the times.
Yeah. Well, Jack Mason still holding on to 20th place. Williamson looks as if he's dropped back a tiny bit, although having said that, I think he was going to have a look there at turn one before backing out of it. Whether he did that deliberately or whether that was a mistake being a little bit too late on the brakes, I don't quite know.
I think he got caught out because that was very nearly some paint swapping going on there. Oh, there's something going on behind him now.
Although, having said that, the mistake thing is he did that into turn one, but that in turn has let Mikko Sky get right into the draft there, and there's Kevin Shepherd in the left exiting.
He's off.
Stage right, unfortunately.
Yes.
Having, I think, tried a very bold move into the bus stop chicane, and unfortunately just
moved. Isn't it? Exit stage right? Exit.
I can't remember, but either way, he made an attempt at the manoeuvre, but unfortunately just lost the back end a bit under braking. Meanwhile, Shirley and Erdmann and Shipson and Hodgson battling away. It's been a while since we've seen three cars line astern like this, going back a good few seasons. Well, three cars from the same team. Going back to a good few seasons now, when we had the KTM Honda trio of Crawford Brown, Eddie Warden and Radek Schuller, before the rules were changed to stop teams from basically loading the best drivers. And me, I think they won. I think between the three of them, they either won every race or won nearly every race. Meanwhile, pit window has opened, and Nemsovsky has dived in for his first, and so is Brooke, actually, for the first of two mandatory pit stops. Shirley going around the outside of Erdmann there. Erdmann's got the inside line for the bus stop chicane, though. It's going to be last of the late breakers, and Shirley backs out of it, but takes too much curve in the second part of the chicane there, and has to cede the position to both Shipston and Hodgson.
Pardon my ignorance, but is that reading right that Schuller is actually 3 laps ahead of Badowski?
No, it shows that Shirley is on lap 3.
Oh, thank heavens for that. Otherwise, I was thinking, this man's unstoppable. Right, okay, so he's actually...
just under a second.
Just under a second, and of course it's not a lapped race, it's a timed race.
Yeah, it's time certain race.
Me, I should have taken that on board before I made such a stupid comment. My apologies.
Meanwhile, looking at Damien Vilk in the there's Audi just ahead of him there. That's Schaefer with a bit of damage on the front end of his car. Vilk having a look at the inside at the heel of the boot on Magnus Dahlgren. Rather trying to hold off the position from Dahlgren, because Dahlgren looking quite racy indeed. He's decides against having a move at the penultimate corner, which is a stunningly fast left-hander, and also
a good idea not to do it.
Really get done for
he's done it after it
quite easily.
After it, look, he's gone.
Just wait for timing to update. There's Dahlgren is still behind Vilk. Meanwhile, Goris and Schaefer battling away for P11. Schaefer going very wide actually at the exit of turn 1, but still able to hold on through the S's. The Porsche not the quickest car in a straight line, although that's more artificial BOP rather than the actual real life pace of the car, because Porsche in real life is very quick, as Damien Vilk goes past there, and Dahlgren also at the chicane.
They rebalanced the game recently, didn't they?
The outer loop. Yeah, so it's only a matter of time before I think we might even be getting the new 992 Porsche that's made its debut recently in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship at the Rolex 24 this year. As Dahlgren has a look at the toe of the boot and is side by side still with Wilk, and I think Dahlgren has got a position. Yes, he has. So Dahlgren has moved up into 12th place. Yeah. Meanwhile, Shipston is on the back of Erdmann's Honda now. And the Lexus team still run line astern. And it's only going to be a matter of time, I think, before at least one of them decides to have a go. Shipston's going to have a look around the outside. Erdmann on the inside. Oh, just about able to hold on is Sebastian Erdmann in the number 8 Honda NSX. They come up the hill now through the S's once more. As Daniel Wilk comes into the pits, and it does make you wonder if the Lexus team might want to do bump drafting like you normally see in the MX-5 Cup. And meanwhile, they're now going 3 wide into the chicane as
it popped out like a
Shipston goes over the grass there, and that moves Hodgson up into 4th place. And now Shirley just backing off there to avoid crashing into his teammates, heading down now.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's watching these three, it's like teammate, schmeen-mate. I just want to be in front.
Well, the thing is that the problem with a modern GT3 car nowadays is that the aero on these is such that you can't really do bump drafting like you see in the Mazda MX-5 Cup, for example. The way in which a GT3 car works is that they need to be run incredibly stiff just to get the aero to work. And looking at the new Porsche and the Ferrari as well, the 296 GT3, which is fascinating from an engineering standpoint, but both of those cars look, just goes to show how much evolution there is as Dahlgren goes past Schaefer for 11th place, and the Schaefer there driving the Audi, which is in its second Evo model on a version of the car that was first introduced in 2015 or 2016, and the original iteration of that Audi R8 was an absolute game changer in terms of just the sheer amount of aero on that thing. And since then the teams have been doing what they can to try and improve that, so it's going to be interesting to see how the 296 and the 992 perform. I mean, obviously they didn't have neither of them had a very good BOP, and indeed Ferrari actually have since made some adjustments to the 296 to stop the issues with the floor, the under tray coming off. So all these cars have a flat under tray for aerodynamic purposes, and there was some issues with the car at Daytona which hadn't been picked up during testing. It's understood that Ferrari themselves have actually fixed it, which led to a very rare DNF for the Risi Competizione team, which is it's not often you hear Risi Competizione did not finish in the same sentence, such as their record. It's going to be interesting to see. Meanwhile, Schuller is just currently lapping Mad Al. Al is in 22nd place, has pitted. It's worth noting. And the thing is, the good thing with having a 1 hour pit window is that it does introduce a lot of elements for strategy. So normally you see the drivers at the front of the field, like Schuller, like Badowski, like Erdmann, for example, tend to pit relatively late into the race, whereas some drivers who are more in the midfield tend to pit a bit earlier, and you've got some who pit roughly halfway through, depending on
they try and get the midfield try and get the undercut by doing that.
Yeah. And you see Gianni Lenz battling with Mad Al, which is actually for position, I should add. There's not far behind them is actually a battle for third place, but it still rages on. Hodgson with a good run out of turn 1, good slipstream.
Shirley there. It's a good choice of words because he's raging out there.
And Hodgson gets past him into
unfair.
Don't know. I didn't quite catch the beginning of that.
No,
unfortunately,
I don't mean
there was. I don't know if there was contact between.
No.
Shirley
I just mean that the poor bloke had nowhere to go. It was unfair. He had to spin. There was nowhere. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Erdmann with a spin there at the chicane. Of course, the chicane, relatively speaking, modern addition to the circuit.
Yeah, I'm not saying either driver did anything wrong. I'm just saying the result of which was unfair to Erdmann.
Yeah, the bus stop chicane actually being quite a recent addition to the circuit. Well, relatively speaking, it was only added back in the beginning of the 1990s to try and slow cars before the.
It didn't work much, did it?
And it did, because there were a couple of accidents actually in 1990. One of which saw NASCAR driver JT McDuffie actually killed after suffered brake failure, and
they will always change it after a terminal normally in America.
They also had there was also a really nasty accident for Tommy Kendall in the Intrepid IMSA GTP, which had the most ridiculous amount of downforce you can imagine, and it actually, if I remember correctly, it was the suspension that let go on the way in and hit the wall head first and suffered really bad leg injuries. Actually had to take pretty much a year out to recover. Went back to carry on racing though in Trans Am, and even recently, about 10 years ago, was actually driving one of the Works Vipers in the American Le Mans series, as it still was back in those days. Now, I also did a lot of commentary work as well in between on the kart championship.
Niki Lauda was back in the car 3 weeks after being turned into a crisp. Come on.
Nemcovsky, and Nemcovsky and McLaren started up in P6, although did pit early on to try and get a bit of clear track. It's just getting laps there by Hodgson, although that will obviously balance out as we go further into the race. Tarantino having a look up the inside on Sky. Just about able to get the job done there, up into P13. Heading into the toe of the boots now. Very short braking zone for that corner actually, because it's quite a steep uphill gradient.
And that cuts into your acceleration up. You've got to make sure that you've still got your revs going, otherwise you are screwed trying to get out of there.
Yeah, but Tarantino able to hold on at the end of the straight as they now head back up the hill. The Lamborghini, there's also going to be a new version of the Lamborghini as well, potentially, as they're on a
lovely banana yellow on the front of that. A lovely banana yellow on the front of that, isn't it?
Yeah. The one of the main differences actually with the Evo 2 is that they've got there's actually a roof scoop to provide some form of ram air effect into the engine air intake, which is something they built on the added on the STO model to simply just to actually get it homologated onto the GT3 car.
Right, STO still takes oxygen. That's what the scoop's for. Joke.
I think, if I remember correctly, stands for Super Trofeo Omologata. Supertory homologation.
Would be Latin, wouldn't it?
So it is, so they've basically done that as a quote-unquote sort of homologation special.
Yeah, but Alski's up in second place. Storming it up there is only 4 seconds behind.
Still running in P2 at the moment. Kind of 45, Marko Dowski in the Audi. It's Hodgson, Shirley and Shipston in the Lexuses, with Kostadinov now up into P6 for BMW in the throwback to the old Group 5 Jägermeister liveried car that raced back in the Deutsche Rennsport Meisterschaft back in the day in West Germany.
Now, I think we've had this discussion before. Is it Lexuses or Lexi?
I don't know, but I know what my esteemed broadcast colleague Jeremy Shaw says on IMSA Radio, which is Lexuses. So yeah.
So 3 of them. All right, got it.
So yeah. If it works on professional broadcast, it will probably work on a sim race for good measure. Currently on board with Nigel Wood at the moment, with covering Sebastian Erdmann right behind him. Ooh, mad out having to really get out of the way of Gianni Lenz there in the Mercedes as Miko Sky comes into the pits for his first pit stop. Everyone from Damien Vilk down to including Al Lenz, all the way down to Peter Varga in, I think, 27th place, have all pitted, made their first mandatory pit stop, although I think Varga might have potentially even DNF'd, maybe. I will probably have a look into that, and there we are. As if by magic, there is Kostadinov in the Jägermeister car.
And 193's had a problem.
Oh, that's a separate incident because I can see
there. Further down, isn't they?
Yeah, car number 193 is much further down the field.
Yeah, it's like, doesn't matter, does it?
Well, it does.
Joke.
It is still, unfortunately, we can't quite see which one that is. As there's Chris Brook there, just getting out of the way of.
Control is being denied. Control is being denied.
There is Gianni Lenz in car number 22. There's a car off at the exit of the third to last corner. Car number 8, I think that might have been Erdmann. So whether Erdmann's been involved in a collision with someone, I don't know. Hodgson's in the pits for his first pit stop. So
yeah, but Erdmann is falling down. Yeah.
Yeah, Erdmann's lost a good few positions. There's a car off at the.
Seeming 11 at the moment. He's still going down. 12.
Yeah, he'll be. He's coming to the pits as well for his first. Well, he's decided actually to come into the pits for his first mandatory pit stop as well. That's why there's
probably get some repairs, poor bloke.
That's the reason why there's a little 2 next to the driver's car number. For those who never watched the Constructors' Championship before, it indicates how many mandatory pit stops they have left to complete. And if it's green, then that means the driver in question has completed all of their pit stops. There's a Mad Al just letting Tom Shipston through in 4th place. Pair of Lexuses still going around. There's Al in his trademark grey and red McLaren in the background.
The top 11 have not stopped yet.
There's a few drivers as well who so Gretchen hasn't, Sherlock hasn't.
Yeah, that's why he's just overtaken Wilk, because he hasn't stopped.
Shirley, a little bit of contact there, I think, between Shirley and that might have been Lenz, I think, in the Mercedes. I think that is indeed Lenz's car.
Number 7. Yeah, looked like a number 7. Yeah.
And on board, looking back from Shirley towards the back straight, the powder blue barriers, such an iconic feature of the circuits. There's Shipston now about to try and get past the number 7 Mercedes, currently down in P20 at the moment, with Lenz behind the wheel. And in proper American style, not making it easy for the Lexus to go past. Of course, the Lexus has had a massive amount of success in the IMSA WebTech Sports Car Championship.
And of course, the driver in front has every right not to make it easy. They don't have to be illegal, but they don't have to make it easy.
Correct, yes, unlike Formula 1 where it is 3 blue flags and then you've got the stewards on the radio to you. In America, it's done differently, and there's a reason why. Brushing the barrier slightly, and as a result,
enough
time to let Erdmann through. Erdmann is currently down in 21st, having made his first pit stop, and I am presuming some repairs, and is now a lap behind Shipston. Shipston still not having pitted yet. I think going for a later pit stop in the race this evening. Head up through the S's once more as the sun starts to set, starting to see that golden hour light, and just starting to see the headlights reflect a little bit more on the tarmac.
Remind me, are we on double fuel?
It's so the pit stop rules are that you have to make at least 2 fuel stops, by which it means you have to put at least a litre of fuel to the car. So as a result, it depends on fuel economy and what engine map everyone's running, but it's all going very smoothly so far. There's Kevin Shepherd in the 41. There's Sherblum letting the few other cars through as he comes past the pit lane entry line and is in the pits for his first pit stop. Currently P13, having just ceded the position, a couple of positions there to Dirk Gretschel and Damien Vilk on the way into the pits. As they come up the hill now through the S's, Gretschel doing rather well indeed, given that the first time he actually drove the GTR was, I think, in practice for the race last time. He goes across the grass at the chicane as well in the big Nissan, and just a slight bit of contact there with the barriers on the inside as Vilk picks off another position to go up into P11. Gretschel in the big GTR, but yeah, as I was saying, the first time he actually drove the car was not long before qualifying, actually, last time out.
It does look very wide in the front, doesn't it?
A very good job indeed. The GTR is quite a large car. Hasn't had, well, the 2018 model, which this is, hasn't had all that much success in Europe, but or indeed in America, but in Japan it has had masses of success with in fact even actually last year won the GT300 class in Super GT in what was effectively a works backed entry with João Paulo de Oliveira, one of the drivers behind the wheel. We did have a few good runs in the Intercontinental GT Challenge as well with the KCMG team. KCMG now moving to Honda for this season, which they're running in GT World Challenge Asia, I believe. Last couple of years they've been running Porsches in many series.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the change.
Including the NLS for the Nürburgring 24 Hours and a one-off IMSA appearance as basically a full-on works backed entry. There's Eddie Warden with the Valkenhorst car of Philip Hahn right behind him. Shirley currently in the pits for his first pit stop, and there's an Audi in the background, which might be Badowski.
Hahn's definitely chewing his exhaust pipe, wasn't he? Oh, he's slowed down and let...
Yeah, I think he was just letting a couple of drivers through quickly. That was Eddie Warden being one of them. And in fact, although Warden has a slight off that fact, I think they were both trying to actually let the Audi through, which I think might have been Badowski in the Audi. Indeed, it is Badowski in the Audi. It's car 45. So, and I think in doing so, there's a little bit of confusion, although both cars do have side exit exhausts from memory. At least I know for a fact the Nissan does. I'm fairly certain the BMW as well. There's the Porsche.
Don't lean up against them after a race.
Well, quite. It's the Porsche of Williamson is closing up as well. by this, thanks to these two battling away with each other as Badowski goes off into the distance to complete yet another lap. Still Radek Schuller leading from Marco Badowski, Tom Shipston, Todor Kostadinov, Magnus Dahlgren, Damien Lowe, Terry Agoris, Martin Chafer, Jakob Tarantino, and Shirley is the top 10 at the moment. Damien putting in an absolutely cracking run so far in the Audi R8. Just behind Dahlgren at the moment, there's Sherblum right behind in the McLaren. It's not for position. Sherblum is a lap down on these two as Dahlgren dives into the pits. So that moves Lowe up into P5. There's Shipston, battling away with Erdmann once more. Except this time, it's not for position because Erdmann's down in P6, Shipston's up in P3. So this is to put a lap on the Honda, or the Acura as it would be here in America. So currently riding on board now with Jakob Tarantino in the 22 Lamborghini, coming through to one. Very important to get a good run, good exit out of here because it is a long run up the hill towards the inner loop and the bus stop chicane. And there's Kostadinov in 4th place, just going past Chris Brook in the NSX to put a lap on him. Just outside the top 10 is, Shirley's now up into P9. Vilk is presumably in P10 because of Dahlgren's pit stop. We won't know for a couple of moments yet, but behind Vilk at the moment, it's provisionally Gretschel, Hahn, Ward and Williamson, Wood, Guy, Lane, Al, although that is subject to change given the pit stops that have been occurring.
Badowski's gained a little bit on Schuller, but only a little. Because he had dropped to just over 5 seconds.
Yeah, the Kostadinov still P4 at the moment. That'd be 17 seconds behind Shipston. Field just spreading out a bit now while the pit stop cycles all sort themselves out. So the likes of Schuller, Badowski, Shipston, Kostadinov, Lowe, Agoris, Chafer, Tarantino and Gretschel all need to make 2 stops in the next 35 minutes. Then there's everyone else who has pitted once so far, which is Dahlgren, and then everyone from Hahn down. The rest of the field, I don't know quite off the top of my head, unfortunately, if there is anyone who has made both mandatory pit stops, but it still looks for the moment like everyone is saving their second pit stops for later on.
We can say with certainty that nobody in the top 23 has used both.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there's Nigel Wood in 16th place, battling away with Erdmann. This is 4th position, and Erdmann in the NSX pulls out the slipstream. It's a good exit out of the final corner, pulls out the slipstream, and manages to just about get up the inside into turn 1, but loses it again in the NSX and goes off to the right and goes nose first into the wall just after the pit exit there. So Wood stays in 16th place. Kostadinov's just come in for his first pit stop. Sky's coming in for his second pit stop. And Erdmann presumably will be coming in for another pit stop fairly shortly to get the front of the NSX taped up. Front of that car being held together by whatever the digital equivalent of
silver gaffer tape.
Gaffer tape, zip ties, thoughts and dreams are.
Perhaps a bit of milliput. That's good stuff, milliput.
there's not going to be enough time to get some Araldite on there, I know that much.
No.
I did hear a...
Oh, mind you, I've heard some welders' tales of an almost instant setting glue that they use for sticking metal together. So...
Yes, unfortunately, the relative component parts of a GT3 car don't contain all that much metal these days. This is more carbon fibre.
Super glue!
Although I did hear a story, actually, from... it was actually one's mother over dinner that her first husband had a broken wrist once, got a saw the cast off, and then rocked up to scrutineering, no cast on, got on the bike, did a race, and then afterwards just put both halves of the cast back on and then just glued it back together. I should add, if anybody's listening to this, please, for God's sake, do not try this. This was club racing in the 1980s. The stories I've certainly heard from my parents were pretty.
If you haven't
crazy.
Lost a limb, if you haven't lost a limb, get on the bike.
It's word there.
Losing it a bit.
Word did not the cleanest exit, I don't think, from the bus stop chicane. Looked as if he had a bit of a moment on the curbs there, actually. And it's not going to matter in terms of he's going to lose a position, because Erdmann's 13 and a bit seconds behind him. So he's okay in that regard. But either way, some cars do look slightly easier to drive than others as it gets cooler and cooler here. As the sun sets below the horizon at Watkins Glen. 35 minutes to go as there's a car just pulling off into the background as Badowski comes in for his first pit stop with half an hour to go in the pit window.
Yeah, mind you, hour and 10 race, 35 minutes in, he's about halfway, so he's done well on that first set.
Well, the way the tyre wear is that I think most drivers plan to do the race on one set of tyres, provided it stays dry, of course, which I think it will do, as Erdmann comes into the pits again, his second stop. As Shipston also follows Badowski into the pits as well. So that's second and third place in. And Damien Lowe comes in from P4, excuse me. And that means that Shipston and Badowski should be exiting the pits fairly soon. So Radek Schuller continues to lead out in front in the Honda NSX, one of the most dominant car and driver combinations in the history of the RWB International Constructors Championship.
Dangerous coupling, those two.
And also factoring in that season where we ran the first half in GT4, managed to get up there into P7 because Tarantino, I think, just made a slight mistake. He's just got a little bit of a bad exit, unfortunately, heading out the bus stop as Damien Lowe comes out the pits. Meanwhile, if Erdmann's evening couldn't get any worse, he's just been given a stop and go 30 for speeding in the pits. Man's had absolutely no luck whatsoever this evening. Like, he's basically got the same amount of luck this week as what Kurt Hodgson had last week.
Well, he's had loads. He's had loads, but it's all bad.
Quite. So Erdmann will be making another trip into the pit lane fairly soon. And speaking of going into the pit lane, there's Mad Al going in for his next stop. There's Tarantino up in P6. Number 22 in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo.
No, that's not Quentin's son, it's spelled different.
And coming into the final sector now, just last few corners. Currently 21 laps completed by Radek Schuller. As the Badowski still manages to hold on to second place as Shipston is now just behind, is a bit behind Agoris in third. Agoris yet to pit is by 6.9 seconds. Tarantino comes in for his first stop.
So, Rob, what do you think is Shulu's plan for he's got to do 2 stops? Is he going to say to him for the last 20 minutes or something?
Later than that, I think. Normally, there are a few drivers when they're going to stop by just seeing what patterns emerge from previous races where we've had pit windows, and usually Crawford Brown, I think, as well, is another driver who does this. They tend, both Crawford and Scholler and a couple of others, tend to stay out as long as possible and just build as much of a buffer as they can, which they both know they can do. They're both clearly quick enough to be able to just knock out the lap times and let the fuel come down, and then
see the game plan
twice in 10 minutes. Whereas some drivers like to try and pit early, get a bit of clean air, and then see how far up the field they can go. A lot of the drivers who've done that, though, haven't had terribly good races, I think, unfortunately. So it's a bit of a double-edged thing. I mean, there are a few drivers who are currently running in the midfield. Some have made all their pit stops. Some have still got. Some have made 1 pit stop. Some have got both to go.
I still feel that to be fair, the drivers that are always at the top are always the ones who are the best at dealing with traffic.
As Schuller has in fact actually made a very early, well, by his standards, pit stop.
It did.
In the 96 Honda, which we missed unfortunately, as
completely. There it was, gone.
As Dahlgren has a look up the inside, Vilk gives him plenty of racing room, and Dahlgren moves up P9 instead of P10 because Tarantino is in the pit serving his final stop. So Vilk manages to hold on to P10, but Dahlgren effectively gains 2 positions and goes up into P9. Tarantino is still in the pits in car number 22. Vilk in car number 21. Field.
I love this sweep up here. I love driving up there. Full speed. Boom, boom.
And then
straight up to the chicane at the end.
Just before the 300-yard board, take all the curb on the inside. It's really quite unnerving as you
bounce. You bounce like heck.
It's an overtaking zone, but it's also not an overtaking because
it's not supposed to be. Yeah.
But also at the same time, you have to cut the curb so much that if you're basically going side by side into there, one of you has to back off. One of you has to yield, otherwise you're going to have a big accident. But also at the same time, if you misjudge your turning slightly and turning too soon, then you're going to hit the wall on the inside, and you're going to total the car. Without wishing to put too fine a point on things, as Shirley moves up into P4. So
nicely done as well. Very smooth.
Gets the position there from Chafer. It's.
Didn't get creamed.
But then again, back when F1 used to race here, they just didn't have that. It was full speed into the outer loop. But then again, it was a completely different era.
Different layout.
Back in those days, and
slightly different layout as well.
It was mostly this layout, although apart from the first few in the 60s, where it was actually on a different layout. The big curve where 297 is just going round now was out rather than in. Yes, and the current pit straight didn't actually exist. Agoris appears to have been disqualified for some reason. I can only imagine that's either due to track limits and basically shortcutting the chicane, in avoidance of someone or from massively overspeeding in the pit lane. So not 100% sure what has happened there.
No, he might. Yeah, maybe the mods will look at that and see that nothing really happened and put the bloke back on the map.
Maybe.
You never know. Depends what happens. It depends on what happened, of course.
Maybe not, I don't think. I know about the track limits thing because we have actually had that happen in Constructors' Championship before at Misano, where someone lost it big time at the end of the back straight and ended up spinning to the inside, ended up cutting about 3 corners by accident trying to actually get the car stopped, and then just got immediately disqualified.
You're out.
As the game thought he deliberately cut all the corners when actually he was merely trying to
stop the damn thing.
Yeah, trying to actually get the car stopped. On board with Damien Lowe in the number 97 Audi coming
from where? Sorry, you cut out there.
Coming out of turn 1 and heading up the hill through the S's, there's Dahlgren in 8th place in the Ferrari. And Kevin Shepherd is in the pits making his final pit stop.
I've been noticing your mic has been cutting out a bit tonight. Maybe it's peaking too high.
I don't know,
but have a look later. Have a look later, not now.
Or just do what I do and unplug it and plug it in again.
Oh, that's...
It usually works.
Yes, that's much better. Well done, sir.
If in doubt,
let it out.
Oh no, if in doubt, well, usually the advice in tech support is if you try turning it off and on again, but obviously that wouldn't work unless you want absolute silence.
It's parallel. It's parallel, Rob. I get that.
25 minutes. Of course, there is also the traditional, what does this button do? And then you end up pressing one you really shouldn't. It's totally never happened in broadcast situations before.
No.
I'm saying nothing. It's probably for the best. Meanwhile, Tom Shipston in 3rd place is on the back of Jakob Tarantino. Tarantino going very wide there to get out of the way. I should add those orange blocks at the chicane to try and stop drivers from shortcutting it are actually solid. They don't move, and if you hit those, you are
launch.
Well, no, you're basically going to need an entire front end rebuild in the pits.
Or launch.
Which is something which we found out during the Endurance Championship last year. More on that later on. The Endurance Championship. There's Dirk Gretschel in the 102 Nissan GTR. Heading down through turn 1 now. There's Kurt Hodgson in the 69 Lexus in P14 with Gianni Lenz about 7 seconds further back.
So speaking of endurance, I did 3 hours at Le Mans in Assetto Corsa the other night. That was fun.
And actually, I can confirm what happened to Agoris. He's just posted on Discord in the last 5 minutes that he was too fast entering the pits. And so how it works essentially is that it has a system that if it has. So, for example, if you're maybe 2 or 3 Ks an H fast going into the pits, you'll just get a good old-fashioned standard drive-through penalty. Whereas if you're going massively over the speed limit into the pits, then you will get full-on disqualified. It's what happened in the endurance at Catalonia last year with Jack Alexander, who absolutely. Who actually was too busy. I think he was actually busy trying to adjust the changing some settings, doing the tyre stuff.
Yeah.
Kept his foot in, forgot where the pit entry line was, and
blew it.
Ended up going through it at well over 110 kilometres. which was well over double the speed limit and had to be let back in after a couple of laps by the admins after we'd all finished laughing. To be fair, it just the slight absurdity of it, but
rookie mistake, isn't it, not to do your settings earlier?
Yes, and also another thing with due to the unique way ACC works as well is that as long as you're in first gear, the pit lane speed limiter will automatically be on. If you're in the pits and then you suddenly change up into second gear, then that automatically disables the pit limiter. So at that point, you have to be so careful with your speed, having to basically control it on the throttle and everything. So drive-through penalty, I apologise for that. Yeah. It was the drive-through is the one for getting X number of strikes for track limits. Stop and go 30 is what you traditionally get for speeding in the pits by X% or whatever. So that's how the game detects the all of that. As Matt Sherblum comes in for his final pit stop. There's Kevin Shepherd.
All this AI, it's so clever, you know.
Anybody who's ever played Gran Turismo will be able to say the exact opposite. Just saying.
There are mixed views, both for and against it. That's a nice inside take by 35 there.
That's Badowski in the 45. Hans in a BMW.
I said by the 35.
Yeah, that's car 45 we're looking at. Sorry, Badowski, Audi.
Excuse me while I take my eyes to the opticians.
Badowski still in P2, 12.4 seconds behind Schuller. 28 laps completed. Schuller still out front where he has been for the entire race and with the fastest lap as well and pole position, so well on course for a Grand Slam. I dread to think how many that man has, but quite a lot.
It's in the area of many.
Yes, he's done quite a few indeed, as Gretschel is back into the pits, not for a mandatory pit stop, but to actually clear the stop and go penalty. So Gretschel will have to actually pit again because this doesn't count as one of your mandatory pit stops. So if you have to go through the pits to serve a penalty, then it won't count towards the total. So in about the next minute or so, we should get a little message pop up on the screen saying that car number 102 has cleared the stop and go 30. Right on board with Marco Badowski in the 45 Audi, indicating that Gretschel has cleared that with just under quarter of an hour to go. There's Hahn there. Yeah, that is Hahn in the in the BMW, excuse me. There's Badowski in the Audi, and Hahn might make it a little bit more challenging for Badowski, methinks. Lenz didn't. And there we go. And Hahn pulls over to the inside to let Badowski through, which he does, and then dips back in to try and stay ahead of Lenz. And speaking of which, I said it would come up on the screen, and it has, that Gretschel has cleared his 30-second stop and go penalty. So he is going to be back in for another pit stop in the next 13 minutes. So that's how long's left on the pit window. Still Schuller, Badowski, Shipston, Shirley, Robe, and Kostadinov. Excuse me, is now in.
Where did you get 13? I've got 1746. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. I see it. I'm looking at the wrong window.
Yes, so there's a bit in the middle which says pit window open, which indicates how long there is for drivers to take their
patently
stops.
Patently obvious. I'm being a YouTube viewer. Please forgive me.
It's Damien Lowe.
Where is this race? It's on the blooming screen.
Damien Lowe running a bit wide there at the exit of turn 1, although shouldn't, which is about the first time I think I've really seen someone actually run quite that wide, as Badowski and meanwhile Hahn and Lenz are still battling away, or rather it's just Hahn, because there's Lenz in the background battling with I don't quite know who. It might be Brooke. I think we'll have a look when they next cross the start-finish line to try and work out who that was. Woods has come in for his second and final pit stop. There's Shirley in the Lexus with Tarantino right ahead of him.
Please don't let the battle be with Erdmann, please.
It won't be all. And no, indeed, it was just a mistake from slight mistake there from Lenz, and he drops back a little bit. Still showing Chris Brooke as being in 15th place at the moment, although both Lenz and Brooke need to make their second pit stops. Schaefer actually still needs to make both pit stops from P5. So Schaefer leaving it very late indeed, as he's well within his rights too. There's Philip Hahn in the Valkenhorst BMW. Valkenhorst, a very successful team for BMW, and but this year we'll be racing a Ferrari, in fact, at the Le Mans 24 Hours, not the big M8 GTE. Valkenhorst actually getting an automatic invitation to Le Mans this year after winning the Asian Le Mans series in the GT class. The Le Mans entry list was actually published just yesterday, actually, and it basically reads like a who's who of sports car racing. It is absolutely fantastic to see that we're going to have 16 cars in the top class fighting for the win this year, and it is going to be, what with it being the 100th anniversary as well, is going to be quite a special race this year. I'll be watching along from the UK and probably also working on the race coverage as well, so that will be a good one this year. Meanwhile, Johnny Lenz still in P13. Now we're looking at Sherblum. There's Chris Brooke just behind him, and there's Tom Shipston in P3 for Lexus. Shipston, good exit out of turn one, just about keeping all four wheels within the boundary of the curbs there.
I assure viewers that even though it looks dusky, that from inside the car there, it is much, much darker. What you see from the inside is a lot darker than we see from viewing the spectator views.
Yes, it is 7:58 p.m. now here at the circuit, which means it is full on nighttime running now for the remainder of the race, the last 13 minutes and 47 seconds. So drivers are going to have to get used to trying to pick out their markers with just their headlights, although headlights on modern GT cars are absolutely phenomenal these days. And as for the prototypes, it's just, I remember Ben Collins's book, describing what it was like seeing the lights of a prototype in your wing mirror, was basically just a blank page. It is just nothing but the most intense light you could imagine, and yeah, headlight technology has come on leaps and bounds in the last decade or so. Still a few drivers wanting to stay out and keep going as long as they can before final pit stop. So Kostadinov in P8 is the first of the drivers to have made both stops.
Funny you should say that, Rob, because I was just comparing the difference between those that have left it late, are all at the top end, and those that have already done theirs are down at the bottom end.
Yes, because a pit stop is...
Kostadinov's the exception at the top.
Yes, because the way the pit lane at Watkins Glen is it's relatively short, but I think the pit exit line is also quite late as well. actually
it's
after.
lethal to get out of there. It is
Yeah.
dodgy getting out.
So Schaefer is in for his first pit stop on lap 32 as the rest of the field come through. There's a little battle here with Shirley and Shipston, and see Chris Brook there in the Honda go past. There's Tarantino as well. All for position. It's 3rd, 4th, 14th and 15th at the moment, given the way the traffic has fallen, although both of the Lexuses and Chris Brook all need to actually pit, so Tarantino's going to gain quite nicely out of this as Eddie Warden comes in for his final stop as well. So we'll be just waiting to see where the rest of the field filters through. There's Shirley in for his final stop with 6 minutes to go on the pit window. And no doubt there will be a few drivers leaving it later than this. I think the latest we had last time was about a minute or so on the clock left at Kyalami. Also, Coach, excuse me if I remember correctly.
Some people run it so close, don't they?
Well, yeah, it works. It works as a valid strategy.
Hey, I'm not knocking it. I'm just always surprised at it.
Yeah, as Gretschel down in P20 as well, also needing to pit for the final time. It's just over 10 minutes left on the clock here at Watkins Glen. It's still Schuller, Badowski, Shipston, Shirley, Lowe, Dahlgren, Kostadinov. Excuse me, so I think Shirley's actually dropped a few positions. It just hasn't updated yet on the timing charts. Dahlgren's showing in 6th. Well, no, it might actually be in 4th. Kostadinov, Vilk, Schaefer and Hodgson in top 10 at the moment. There's Damien Lowe in P5. There's Dan Williamson just getting out the way there in the Porsche 911. Lowe coming through the outer loop once more as Schuller comes in for his final stop. Should drop him down. If Badowski and Shipston stay out, that should drop Schuller down to around P3. Such as the way the gaps are at the moment. There's Dahlgren in the Ferrari, just behind Chris Brook in the Honda NSX GT3.
Schuller should just about come out in front of Shipston, but only just.
Schuller should come out behind Shipston. I think he'll probably come out in front of Shirley. There's just waiting for everything to update at the moment, so we won't know for another couple of minutes once everyone else has pitted roughly what the order is. But either way, it has been another quick race so far. Shipston and Badowski leaving it another lap. There's Dahlgren. Is he going to peel into the pits this time? No, he's not. He's going to leave it another lap as well and pit next time by. As is Lowe. Let's wait and see whether the likes of Vilk, Schaefer, Hodgson and Carr are going to come into the pits or not. Don't think they are. There's Kostadinov still in P7. So yeah, and Schaefer has made it into the pits for his second pit stop, and that leaves wait a little bit longer, and so does Hodgson. Just wait a bit longer, see if Lenz does the same, which he might, given that there's about 24 seconds between Lenz and Hodgson, 10th and 12th. So might be waiting just a wee while here. But either way, Kostadinov through the inner loop now and heading round the outer loop to run down towards the toe of the boot, which is not this left-hander, it's the right-hand hairpin coming up as Gretschel comes in for his final stop. So does Lenz. The likes of Badowski, Shipston, Lowe, Dahlgren and Vilk all leaving it until the final 90 seconds or so in the pit window to make their final pit stops. Also means that Badowski is going to be officially recorded as having led a lap. We're looking at where the likes of Lowe and as Lowe comes in this time around. I was going to say he could have actually stayed out for another lap. So Dahlgren makes a late move there into the pit entry and just about gets it hauled up in time as well. The likes of Badowski and Shipston are going to leave it for another lap, and Vilk is going to have to pit this time, surely, because there is, looking at the gap between Vilk and Dahlgren and how long's left on the clock, there is no way Damien can, which he does. I was going to say there's no way Damien can actually make it to the end, well, to actually make another lap before the pit window closes. Now going to be a case of seeing where the leaders are. There's the blue dots coming towards the final corner now is Badowski, and he is going to come into the pits now, which he does, and Shipston is coming up to the final corner now and is also going to join Badowski in pit road. And it's going to be just a matter of time before the 96 is recorded as being in the lead, which it is now, as Radek Schuller goes back into the lead of the race, having already made his final pit stop. Just 90 seconds to go on the pit window. So long as you actually make the pit in line before the end of the pit window, you're absolutely grand. But that means that everyone has just about made their 2 mandatory pit stops this evening, and it is now going to be a straight fight to the end. So we'll do a quick rundown for you in a moment or two's time, though it is now Schuller, Badowski, Shipston, Shirley, Kostadinov, Lowe, Dahlgren, Hahn, Chafer and Vilk. That's your top 10 according to the timing totem at the moment.
And watching these last 5 minutes, how wide the elbows get for those that are anywhere near an overtake.
Guys had an off at the inner loop, hence the yellow flag, car number 777. And I think Mikko has retired from the race, unfortunately. He's done a return to the pits because I can't see car 777 on the board anymore. Down to 22 cars. Been not the most attritional race so far, but still with a bit of attrition there as well. So heading into the final few laps of the race, currently on lap 37 at the moment. Schuller is currently heading up to final corner now, which means that I believe there is he.
Something.
Yeah, it's something there in the Nissan GTR. There's Matt Scherblem. Schuller now on 37 laps completed. Trying to see where the Honda is in comparison to the race clock. It's about 1 minute 45 seconds or so per lap, so there might be another 2-3 laps here, I think, maybe, for Radek Schuller and co. Of course, we have had situations in the past before where teams have actually run out of fuel pretty much after Schuller has actually crossed the finish line with about a second to go, forced everyone to do another lap, and in doing so actually led to some fantastically extreme fuel saving. I remember we had that at Brands Hatch once a while back. There was a Schuller across the start finish line with about 1 or 2 seconds to go, even though he could have basically parked it and crawled across the line. And the net result was there were some teams who had to try and do a lap of the Grand Prix circuit at Brands, but not with a lap's worth of fuel. So that was an interesting moment. Still looking at Kurt Hodgson in car number 69, the Lexus.
Can you just imagine the digital car bloke nattering away in your ear? We don't have enough fuel. We don't have enough fuel. We do not have enough fuel for this lap.
Well, the 1999 French Grand Prix, the Jordan mechanics, to actually get the fuel sample to the FIA, had to disassemble the. Well, no, they had to. Worse than that, they had to disassemble the entire fuel assembly, drain the fuel rails, and barely had enough fuel to send to the FIA for the sample. They cut it that fine with Heinz-Harald Frentzen that year.
Half a litre, isn't it? Half a litre?
It was, I think, 1 litre or something like that, or half a litre. But either way,
it's not much.
Either way, they
found it.
Just had some in the car.
Somebody pee in the tank, quick!
Well, you say that, but when Stefan Johansson got a podium at Estoril driving for Onyx, the car was actually ever so slightly underweight. So but just about made the weight limit because one of the stewards happened to be leaning on it.
There's no cheating in motor racing.
No, but it was quite popular. It was a popular result, so at the time. So they thought, well, it's going to look good if we have a new team on the podium. So put a bit of weight on the tyre. Yeah, just put a hand on the tyre, make sure it stays there, and that. So yes, it's has happened in the past. Although in sim racing, of course you can't really run a car underweight, realistically speaking.
No, because somebody else sets the ballast for you, and that's it. You've got it. But in this case, with just 20 seconds to go on the 39th lap, it looks like Schuller is going to teach Badowski a lesson again.
Well, not really. It's still... both drivers are at the absolute top of their game. And although the real battle is actually for P6 at the moment between Lowe and Dahlgren, the time has elapsed.
Yeah. How many have to do another lap?
Whatever happens, this is going to be whenever drivers cross the line, then they will take the checkered flag. Dahlgren and Lowe still separated by only half a second, and Schuller still pushing on. Although it remains to be seen whereabouts Schuller is on track, as to whether or not he takes checkered flag. And we can now see Schuller, he approached to the heel of the boot, so the likes of Dahlgren and Lowe are going to have another lap, in fact, because Schuller has not yet crossed the line, and indeed they are. The gap now down to 0.4 of a second there. There's Hahn backing off to avoid, because he wants to avoid doing another lap. There's Todor Kostadinov in the Jägermeister BMW. There's Dahlgren. There's Lowe just in front. There's Dahlgren. And Radek Schuller is going to come across the line to take victory in the RWB International Constructors Championship here at Watkins Glen this evening. And Philip Hahn also crosses the line in P8 as well for good measure, as does Martin Schaefer in P9, Damien Wilk P10, Kurt Hodgson P11. Currently looking at Marco Badowski at the moment, who's going to come home in P2.
So I want that bet I never had with you then, that Schuller was going to win.
And meanwhile, we've got Tarantino, Warden, Nigel Wood all crossing the finish line. Yeah, Tarantino, Eddie Warden, Kurt Hodgson as well. There's Tom Shipston and Nathaniel Shirley separated by just half a second at the end there in the Lexuses. Good bit of battling between those two. Meanwhile, Dahlgren still in P7 behind Damien Lowe. Todor Kostadinov's going to come home relatively lonely 5th place. Dahlgren thinks about having a look up the inside into the heel of the boot. Not an ideal overtaking opportunity. Gianni Lenz has come home in P16. Dan Williamson in P17. Kevin Shepherd 20th. Matt Sherburn 21st. Dirk Gretschel 22nd. Chris Brook in 18th. Sebastian Erdmann's going to come home in 19th place. Still battling between Dahlgren and Lowe. Lowe just has to hold on for the final corner. Dahlgren is going to have a look up the inside. Not close enough. Lowe cuts him off there on the inside. Good bit of defensive driving from the Singaporean driver. And Damien Lowe is going to come home to finish in P6. And with Dahlgren in P7.
I did. I told you elbows would be out.
And
they were.
Sebastian Erdmann comes home in P19. So that
was exciting.
Was round 4 of the RWB International Constructors Championship.
Yeah, and if you viewers didn't get a buzz out of this, go back to the start and watch again because you missed something. It was good. It was really good.
Yes. Meanwhile, coming up on RWB International, we've got the, amongst other things, we've got the Race Room Mini League on Thursday night. We've got the DTM Meisterschaft on Saturday evening as well, this time coming from the Hungaroring. We've got the new AC Sunday Cup on Sunday night as well.
Are you on for these?
And we've got the, starting on the 11th of March, we've got the new Mazda MX-5 Cup Series, starting at Sachsenring, I believe, on Race Room Racing Experience. This time next week, we've got 2 sprint races in the Constructors' Championship at Paul Ricard. And given that it's the Constructors' Championship, it would be remiss of me not to mention, after round 3, it was Radek Schuller from Marco Badowski, Crawford Brown, Sebastian Erdmann, Eddie Warden, Nigel Wood, Tom Shipston, Todor Kostadinov, Ian Mackey, and Nathaniel Shirley in the top 10 in the driver's standings. But looking at the constructors' standings heading into this weekend, Ferrari were first on 428 points, Lexus were second on 427.5 points, Honda were third on 424.5 points, McLaren were fifth on 358.5 points, and Audi were fifth, on 357.5 points. Now, you might be wondering, okay, why is there half points? But for the 70-minute races, full points are awarded. For the 35-minute races, half points are awarded, half points for each race. So there is a chance, depending on where you finish, you will end up with half a point. So that's just to explain that, just to clarify that. Got the Monday fun arrive and drive. And then on the 25th of March, we have round 1 of the RWB National Endurance Championship, where we have the 6 hours of Barcelona in the GT3 for GT3 cars. That is on March 25th. Still plenty of time to get entries in, and there's still plenty of entries available, 28 spaces so far. In fact, so my thanks to Nate Newcomer for hosting the live stream this evening and for letting me get everything set up this evening. And thanks also to Bruce Andrews for joining me in the commentary box this evening. I've been Rob Lamas, and as always, it's bye for now.
Bye.